Hey everybody, Heather here with a quick overview for our lesson for our school age kids. And so this week we are going to be in Daniel chapter 6. Remember, Daniel is one of the books of history in the Old Testament. And so last week we learned about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And this week we'll be talking about Daniel, and specifically Daniel when he faces the lion's den. Now, our overarching big question that we're trying to answer right now is, why do we pray? And the answer for that is we pray because we trust God and we know that God hears us. So these two stories are great examples of real practical ways where God answered prayers and intervened because of those prayers. So Daniel chapter 6, Nebuchadnezzar is not the king anymore. We've actually had Nebuchadnezzar, and then King Belshazzar, and then he died, and now we're on Darius. So Darius the Mede is now king, and he very much looks up to Daniel. He trusts him. He is highly favored in the eyes of the king. And so he puts him in charge. And Daniel is basically in charge of the whole entire nation. And he's running everything. He's second in command. He's the king's right-hand man. And this makes the Chaldeans and the other wise men and the other people in power extremely jealous. So jealous. And so they begin to watch and look for ways to trap Daniel, to get him in trouble, to find some fault in him. And in Daniel chapter 6, in verse 4, it says, they could find no ground for complaint or any fault because he was faithful and no error or fault was found in him. And then in verse 5, it says, we shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. So there was nothing that they could trap Daniel in unless they attacked his relationship with the Lord and went about that way. So they create this scheme and they trick Darius into signing a law that says for the next 30 days, they can only pray to Darius. And Daniel knows about this law. He hears about it. And it says in verse 10, when Daniel knew the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had the windows open, and he got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before God, just as he had done before. So Daniel, the faith of Daniel, that he knows that no matter what, he is still going to follow God. He has that steadfast resolve, same that we saw in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so the people who are against Daniel are watching him, and they know that he's going to do this. So as soon as they see him praying, they capture him and bring him before Darius. And Darius is heartbroken because he very much cares for Daniel, and he trusts Daniel, and he loves Daniel. And he is realizing that he was tricked. And so he says, Daniel, I can't do anything about this, but may your God really be as powerful as you say he is, and may he save you from the den of lions. So they take him, they throw him in the pit of lions, and all night long, Darius stays awake, all night long. And he's fretting and he's worrying. And then he runs down first thing in the morning, and he has them roll the stone away, and he calls out and he says, Daniel, did your God save you? That's the question that he wants. Did your God save you? And Daniel says in verse 22 of chapter 6, my God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, and they have not harmed me because I was found blameless before him and also before you. So the king was glad. He calls Daniel to come out of the pit, the den of lions, and then he has those wise men who were trying to trick him thrown into the den of lions, and the lions eat them. And it says, before they even hit the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones into pieces. But then Darius writes this beautiful message, and he has it sent out to all of the nation, all of the areas where he is. It says, King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nation, languages that dwell in all the earth. Now, that means he sent it as far as he could possibly send it. And he says this: He is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed. His dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. And he who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. And then he puts Daniel back in his place of authority. So with us thinking about Christmas and the miracle of God sending Jesus to earth, this story is very applicable because it shows how God is intervening and interacting on our behalf all of the time. Not just this is obviously a big dramatic situation, but God cares about the things that we care about. He is aware of the things that are happening in our lives. And so this week, as you take time and really talk about this idea of prayer and what it means, and it's kind of a weird thing, but we get better at praying by praying. So we learn how to do it by doing it. So take some time and pray for them. Pray for the needs that they have, the things that are on their minds and on their hearts, because we know that God hears us and we trust God. And so we trust him to interact and intervene on those things. So I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas season, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.